Okay, good morning, everyone. Very delighted to be here and see familiar faces. Especially delighted to see Professor Osman Taha, my teacher in Jazeera Medical School since 1993, when we came as a junior student. Very meticulous, rigorous teacher from whom we learned a lot. And I'm trying to do the very difficult job of distilling maybe a 40-year of Sudanese doctor migration and 110 years of Sudanese health services and research in 7 minutes. But we can't really start without talking a little bit about medical education in Sudan, which began in Kitchener Medical School in 1924, one of the first medical schools in Africa, established by the British colonization at that time. The teaching of staff of that medical school came from the Sudan Medical Service, which was established in the same year, 1924. And interestingly, the staff of Wellcome Tropical Medical Research Laboratories, which was established in 1903, so maybe 20 years before, or 21 before the medical school itself. The first batch graduated in 1928 with the diploma of the Kitchener Medical School. The Kitchener Medical School later joined the University of Khartoum and became the Faculty of Medicine. However, the overseas training did not start until 1937, when the Sudan Medical Service started to send graduates for short training experience in UK. It was limited to 3 years experience without any views of diplomas or postgraduate qualification. So the first batch was actually 2 doctors who went to for training for 3 months to UK. It was until 1940s, really, when candidates were sent to obtain postgraduate qualification in terms of diplomas, memberships, or fellowships. Characteristically, those doctors were general duty doctors who worked for 10 to 15 years after their qualification, waiting in the queue for their postgraduate training in UK. So, just some historical fact, actually. So the first Sudanese to obtain the MRCP was 1948-49, the Diploma of Psychological Medicine, and the first surgeon was in 1949, Mr. Bayoumi, who obtained his Edinburgh and Glasgow fellowships. But the system wasn't really working, at least in surgery. So between 1946 and 1953, there were 37 doctors who went to UK for training. However, only 3, that's including everyone, including surgeon, but only between 1948 and 1960, actually only 3 could obtain their FRCS by this hard way. And the reason behind that, actually, those doctors spend maybe 10 to 12 or 15 years in Sudan, required to do their primary or first part without any preparation after a long time away from medical school. So it was perceived as quite difficult, and actually 3 surgeons only make it in the first 12 years or so. Then Professor Taylor, who was the head surgeon in Khartoum University, decided to change the approach and send fresh candidates. So Mr. Ahmed Abdel Aziz, who graduated in 1956, and that's an important name because this person really has been very influential in facilitating Sudanese doctor migration to Ireland and training in Ireland, actually. So he went to England in 1959, obtained his FRCS in 1961, and became the senior general in 1968. That's a picture of containing 2 of the first female graduates in Sudan, Dr. Zarwi Sarkisian and Dr. Khalid Zahir. This picture goes back to 1952, actually. So those are the 2 females doctors in Sudan. So the first part, the primary FRCS, was started in Khartoum in 1960. It wasn't really very difficult because Professor Taylor was the vice president of the Royal College of Surgeons of England, actually. So that continued until 1976, where the Postgraduate Medical Studies Board at the University of Khartoum was established. And at that time, it was deemed probably most of the postgraduate training can be done in Sudan instead of sending candidates overseas. That's a picture goes back to 1980, after the first Master in Pediatrics examination. Some of you probably can recognize few faces. This is Professor Omar Bilal here, and few external examiner and other students. So following the establishment of this board, the rate of migration or postgraduate training really was reduced due to the belief that probably this board will suffice in training doctors inside Sudan. However, as far as coming to the issue of migration in Ireland, as far as I know, the first surgeon who obtained his Irish Fellowship of Royal College of Surgery was Mr. Al-Fatih Hamadain, who was actually sent for a fellowship, the government fellowship to UK. However, he rerouted himself to Ireland. Professor Osman Taha might have a comment on this. However, I double-checked my sources actually. So as far as I was aware, this is the first person. However, Mr. Ahmad Abdelaziz, Mr. Ahmad Al-Tijani followed in 1974. And I think those surgeons influenced the decision of Mr. Ahmad Abdelaziz, who contacted the Royal College of Surgeons in 1976 and encouraged Mr. McGowan, who was the president of the Royal College of Surgeons at that time in Ireland, to accept Sudanese trainees. So at that time, the first batch went to Dublin were four candidates who passed their primary exam or Part 1 FRCS in Sudan. And then the flow continued actually. So there was a large number of candidates, probably up to almost 25 or 30 candidates between the 1976 and up to 1982 or 83, who came here mainly for surgical training due to the agreement between Mr. Ahmad Abdelaziz and the Royal College of Surgeons of Ireland. It was also possible for some doctors to be trained in ENT, ophthalmology, anesthesia under this agreement as well. And the candidates were mainly sponsored by the Ministry of Health, as well as the University of Khartoum and Jazeera, and the Military Medical Corps, and few of them were self-sponsored. So in late 1970s and early 1980s, training in other medical specialties began, including public health. So few came from Jazeera University as well to obtain their master in public health. It's just of note really, there's a lot of candidates who are indebted to Professor Abdelaziz, whose dedication really and commitment made this possible. I spoke with Professor Al-Baghr Al-Faqih in Saudi Arabia, who was one of the second batches who came on this scheme actually. He was a candidate with Jazeera University at that time. And he told me that Professor Ahmad Abdelaziz almost came really annually or every second year to supervise and make sure this training will be continuous and possible. And he actually sponsored himself in many of these occasions. But then between 1985 and the year 2000, there's some stagnation actually. There were Sudanese candidates who came to Ireland for training. However, the number was certainly limited and definitely less than maybe 60 or 70 in total. So most of them returned to Sudan, but some of them moved to Saudi Arabia or other Gulf countries, UK or the United States. So, however, in this period, in this 15 years, I couldn't really get a lot of information from the Irish Medical Council or other sources in terms of numbers or quantitative data. However, we know that there is another wave who migrated from Saudi Arabia to Ireland for better training in between 1985 and 2000. From year 2000 and beyond, there has been really a very rapid growth. So let's just look very quickly here actually. In year 2000, there was only 64 Sudanese trained. I have to differentiate here between Sudanese doctors and Sudanese qualified doctors. Normally, the Medical Council maintain a record of country of qualification. So in year 2000, there was 64 doctors who were qualified in Sudan. That increased to 403 in 2010. And as of June 2012, the number increased to 582. But however, they were also able to provide me with the Sudanese national doctors as of 6th of June 2012, and the number was 627 doctors here. We're not really sure if all these candidates are working in Ireland. Certainly, few probably working overseas or in UK or even doing locum jobs between here and there. So the register of the Medical Council doesn't reflect all the people who are actively working. But we do believe generally probably the number of Sudanese doctors who work in Ireland probably will mount to up to 450 or 500 Sudanese doctors actively working in Ireland at the moment. So my just last few slides. By division, there is 465 of those 627 Sudanese national, 465 in the general division, 57 on the specialist division, and 105 in the trainee specialist division. This has implication and probably can be discussed later. But in terms of age profile, the majority of them was between the age of 36 and 44. However, there was significant number above the age of 45. So it seemed that people really tend to stay in Ireland. Couldn't get any data on male to female ratio by the Medical Council, but according to NOHA's research, it's probably around 7-8% of candidates here are females. Very quick data back from home just to be able to collate. So the total number of doctors registered as of end of May 2012 in Sudan, that's from the establishment of medical record or the Medical Council for 2017 in Sudan. That's the total number of doctors ever registered in Sudan, including all those who passed away. So that's a very old register. Dr. Sheikh Sadiq probably will talk to you about those who are currently working and employed in different various jobs. So the specialist register was established, this is my last two slides. The specialist register was established in 1985. And just a quick look here. So among those who are in the specialist register, 84 were trained in Ireland out of 923 in the specialty of internal medicine. 103 were trained in surgery. Then others were trained in obs and gynae and pediatrics and other specialties. So we have 280 doctors who were registered as trained in Ireland among almost 6,000 doctors in the specialist register in Sudan. That will probably tell you, although probably internal medicine specialists are the highest number, however, probably there was a huge number of candidates who were trained in Ireland in general surgery. Thanks to Professor Ahmed Abdelaziz's effort on this. So, generally speaking, just to draw some conclusions really, the number of Sudanese candidates is increasing in this country. However, the percentage is still around 8 to 9% of the foreign doctors. There is some tendency for those candidates to stay here in Ireland. In the past, almost all of them in the 1970s went back home. And there is another wave of migration from here to UK or to the Gulf state. So thank you very much for listening.